Hi guys, this is Kelly from Cozy Reader Kelly, and today I want to share with you my June wrap-up. And in June I read a total of 20 books, but I did a mid-June wrap-up, so that video will be linked down below, and that I talked about the first 9 books of the month. And then I read 5 graphic novels, and I also did kind of a wrap-up about those specifically, since those are kind of more of a niche market of whether people want to read that. So if you want to read about or listen to me talk about some of the graphic novels I read, I will link that video down below. And so that leaves 6 books, but one I didn't really have anything to say about, so I'm just going to talk about 5 books from the second half of the month in this video. So like always, I'm going to start with one of my favorites, kind of get to my middle ones. This one I don't have any that I hated or anything, so that my lowest is like a 3, and then back up to another really high one. So the first one I want to talk about is Through the Looking Glass. So this version has both Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland back in like January, February, I can't remember exactly. And I really liked it. I think I gave it a 4.5. I really enjoyed it, and I expected Through the Looking Glass to just be a repeat of the first book, and that I would just like it the same, but I actually loved it even more than Adventures in Wonderland, and I ended up giving it a full 5 stars. And the reason I loved it was reading Through the Looking Glass was like watching my 3-year-old play pretend. Like, just the whole time I can imagine that maybe Lewis Carroll, maybe he wrote that just by watching a child playing, because that is exactly what the story is like. Through the whole story, Alice is like, she's kind of talking to herself, and she's talking to all these animals and characters that she's interacting with, and she's totally like playing pretend. That's basically what it is. And you almost get that feeling too by at the beginning of the story, she's talking to her kittens, and like in reality, like she's sitting there talking to her kittens, and then when she gets into Wonderland, you can kind of see that what she was talking about to her kittens kind of transfers to what's happening in Wonderland. So it is just like a big game of pretend, and it was adorable and charming and silly and fun and ridiculous and all the things that when you watch a little kid play and the things they come up with and the crazy, because you know, as adults sometimes we've lost our imagination. Well, this is just like all imagination. I loved it. I cannot wait to read this book with my daughter. I've already kind of talked to her about how we're going to read chapter books soon, so I'm thinking that once she gets into preschool in the fall and she has a little more focus on like circle time, that we're going to start reading these books, because I just love it. It was amazing, and I cannot wait to share it with her. And so the next book, I don't have any really 4 stars. I guess the one at the end is kind of, but then this next one skips right back down to a 3.5. And this is Ruby Red by Kerstin Gier. And when I looked this up on Goodreads, all I saw was, this is translated from German, all I found was the German title. So if you're looking at Goodreads, I searched by the author's name, and that's how I found it on Goodreads, but I couldn't find it as called Ruby Red. It might be on there and I just couldn't figure out how to find it. But anyway, so this is a time traveling story, and it's about a family of time travelers, and the gene kind of passes through certain people in the family. And the main character, and I've forgotten her name. What is her name? Gwen. So the main character, Gwen, she thinks that she's been skipped over, and her cousin is the one that has been raised to be ready to time travel, and the gene doesn't show up until you're about 16. So Gwen is 16, and all of a sudden she gets pulled into the past and finds out, oh, by the way, I'm the one with the traveling gene. So this is her kind of figuring out how to be a time traveler when she was not raised, even though she's in a family that knows about time travel. She wasn't the one raised with the skills and learning about what to do. They've saved that all for her cousin, and so she's trying to figure out what to do now. And I gave this a 3.5 stars because there was a few things. I liked it enough that I want to keep going. It's a trilogy. I want to keep going and find out what happens. I found it entertaining, but I had several issues with it, which made it not more than kind of a middle for me. I mean, the good thing about it is it's got a mix of like mystery and this time travel adventure and a little romance. So it's a mix of a lot of different things. So that was fun and kept me interested. And I want to know what's going to happen with this whole time travel mystery that we find out about. But the things I don't like about it is that if it was middle grade and it was targeted to middle grade, I might have rated it higher, because it's really simplistic in the writing. And I don't know, when I'm judging, I can give a middle grade a 5 stars for being a middle grade, and I can give a YA 5 stars, but when a YA is written like a middle grade, it's not 5 stars for me, because I feel like there's a tier. You know, we start with middle grade, it's really simple, easy to read concepts, and then YA is supposed to be a little more complex because it's targeted at people that have more complex thinking skills, and then adult should be a higher level of writing. And not that it has to be super complex, but this is like, it's just very simplistic. And the main character, she is very juvenile. Like, when I'm reading her, she's supposed to be 16 to 17, and she reads like a middle schooler. Like, she's just very immature. Her actions, I'm like, really, would you be that? Like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but like, she makes these decisions that are really like silly for her age. Like, towards the very beginning, she doesn't tell her like mom, who she's obviously very close to. They talk about that the first time she time traveled, and I'm like, your family knows about time traveling. You're a part of a time traveling family. Why would you not tell your mom? It's like a stupid choice. And so she just keeps making these like really immature decisions that I feel like if she was really 16 or 17, she would have thought more critically about that and realized, oh, I might need some help with this. So, and then like kind of her interaction with there's a whole bunch of people in this kind of secret society that are involved with the time traveling, and the way she interacts with them is really immature too. She really just acts like a middle schooler, and it's fine if it was a middle grade book. I wouldn't be annoyed by that, because I would expect somebody that's 13 or 14 to act more immature than a 16 or 17-year-old. So those are the problems I had, and why I'm not going to give it like a 4 or 5 stars. But I do find it entertaining enough to keep going, and I would recommend it as long as you are able to look past that immaturity and just want to focus on the adventure, because it does have some good adventure and excitement in it. And then kind of the book that kind of maybe rated the lowest this month for me was The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. And I actually listened to this on audiobook, and the reason I rated it a 3 and not a 2 is because the audiobook was amazing. Hugh Fraser is the man who narrates it, and his way of doing all the different voices was just great. He kept me entertained and like stuck in the story with his voices and the way he narrated. I loved it. But if I was reading this book physically, I probably would have given it a 2, because I was really irritated by 2 of the main characters and their interactions. So this is the first, what is called the first book in the Poirot series. So Hercule Poirot, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He's a Belgian and kind of private investigator, and he's like one of the main characters in a lot of Agatha Christie's novels. He's got a whole like series of her novels, and I haven't read any, so I started with number 1. And so we're introduced to him here, and the man who narrates it, his name is Hastings, and I guess what I've read is that he shows up in a lot of Poirot's novels. So I don't know if the Poirot novels are going to be for me, because their interaction with each other really bothered me, because Poirot is one of those investigators that constantly throughout the story he kept telling Hastings, he's like, I'm not going to tell you this, I found out something, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. So then us as a reader, we don't find out what it is. And I like in a mystery, you can keep some stuff behind, but he kept like everything to himself, pretty much. He hardly gave us any breadcrumbs. And I like in a mystery where you get these little breadcrumbs along the way, so that you as a reader can kind of guess what the ending is going to be, and then you're like, ooh, am I going to be right or not? Like, that's kind of part of the excitement of a mystery. But I just felt completely out of the loop. Like, Poirot just does not want to give you anything, at least in this. And maybe he gets better as the series goes on and starts to like reveal a little bit, but no, he was like, I'm just gonna wait till the very end and then I'm gonna tell you everything, instead of like giving you any kind of hints along the way. That bugged me. And then Hastings, who is the narrator, he acts like an idiot so much of the time, and Poirot treats him like an idiot. So, like, they'll be talking about the mystery, Poirot's hiding something from him, and he's like, I want you, Hastings, to figure this out for yourself. But I don't think you're going to, because you're an idiot, is basically what he's saying. He doesn't say it like that, because, you know, she's, like, talking in proper British talking, which obviously I can't do, because I'm not very, very coherent here. But, like, Poirot just treats Hastings like he's so stupid and he'll never be able to figure out for himself. And I'm like, well, why do I want to listen to you guys just not tell me anything, and you treat our narrator like he's not going to figure it out, so I'm not going to get anything from him. So just their interaction annoyed me. And Hastings bothered me as well, because since he's narrating, he just made all these sexist comments along the way. And I know this is written probably back, I don't know, 20s, 30s, I don't know, you know, because she wrote, yeah, publication in 1920. I understand that that's a long time ago, but last month I read And Then There Were None, which was also written back then. And in that one, when they were, I don't know who the narrator was for that. I think it was like a third person, like, kind of writing. There was the ability to question whether the women could have done it or whether the women were capable of murder. In this one, it seems like they were like, oh, women, they don't have the capacity to do these things. And it was, like, really sexist towards the women. Like, Hastings kept, every woman he would meet, he would talk about whether he was attracted to them, and, like, he wanted to, like, steal somebody else's wife, and, like, all these things, and ridiculous ways he was interacting with the women in this novel. And I'm like, no, I do not enjoy Hastings at all. So I'm not going to give up on Agatha Christie. I really like Hugh Fraser narrating. I know that she has other series, like I might try the Miss Marple series, or I might just read more of her standalones. But I'm thinking Poirot might just not be for me. If Hastings continues to narrate and they interact with each other, just not a fan of it. So then my next one is another 3-star, but this is a little better than the last one in my 3-star rating. And this is Along Came a Spider by James Patterson. And this is one of my rereads. I had done a video a while ago, which I'll link down below, where I picked a bunch of books that were my favorites more than 10 years ago, and I was going to reread them and see if I still like them. And so this is the first book in the Alex Cross series, which is James Patterson's, like, most famous series. I think he has like 24 books now out in that series. And more than 10 years ago when I was reading these, I think I had read the first like 12 of the books before I just kind of got tired of the repetition and just kind of gave up on the series. It's like one of those series that never ends, so you don't really like need to go to the end. You can just kind of read whenever you want. And I seem to remember the first few being really good, so I was like, I'll go back and read the first one again and just see if I would still like it. And I gave it a 3. It was in the middle for me. I do really like Alex Cross as a protagonist. I think Patterson did a good job of picking him as being his, like, main protagonist that he was going to follow for a lot of books, because he is entertaining to read about. He has a real, like, passion about solving crimes that happen against the poor people in DC, or the marginalized groups. And so he focuses on that. He is very tenacious about it. He's very devoted to those groups of people, and he also really desires justice in situations. So I do think he's a great character to follow. Plus, like, we get to meet his, like, kids and his grandmother, who's a really sweet person, sweet and strong woman in these books. So all that aspects I like about it. This is an entertaining book. I found it, like, I was kept interested throughout and wanted to finish it, and I didn't remember all of the twists since it was so long ago, so I did have some suspense, though one of the big twists I did remember, and so that took away a little bit of my rereading. Sometimes when you reread a mystery, it can, like, once you already know the twist, it can kind of ruin it. So I'm not judging based on me remembering it, I'm just judging based on reading it like fresh eyes. And the reason I don't completely love it is that it had a lot of twists. Like, it's not that it's bad to have twists, but I think it had at least 5 major plot twists, and after a while I was like, okay, another twist, and you're kind of like, okay, we've had enough twists. Like, you can have one or two. This could have been a lot shorter. Like, this was like 400 some pages. Yeah, like a 430 page book. And a detective novel, which this essentially is just a detective murder mystery, does not need to be 400 some pages long. If we had cut out about, or if he had cut out about 100 pages and maybe done 2 less twists, I think that this would have been a really like compelling, good book. But it was just a little too much. And I don't know if that's just because the first of the series, he really wanted to pack a lot in and like get you interested in the series. But I think it did the opposite for me. I'm not gonna reread any more in this series. I'm gonna call it good. Like, know that I have some nostalgia around these. I would, if you like detective novels, I do think the Alex Cross ones are pretty good. If you don't mind there being a little excess of realistic unrealistic, whatever the word is. If you don't mind an excess of unrealistic plot twists, then I think it's an entertaining series to read. And then the last book that I really loved was I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. And I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was so close to 5 stars, but there were several times when I just didn't really love the characters when I started getting irritated with them, and so I don't feel like it was a full 5, but it was really good. And I did this as a buddy read with Murphy Napier. She buddy reads her classics, so if you're interested in doing that, I'll link her channel down below and you can see what she's reading in the next couple months. And this is kind of just a romance book, and it takes place in the 30s in England, and it's about this family that lives in an old castle. And the father used to be a writer, and he wrote this book that was like a, international bestseller and really highly acclaimed, but then he kind of has washed up and he hasn't written anything since. So the family has become really poor and living off of next to nothing. So when we meet them in this, at this point, they are really like at their lowest. If they are no longer paying rent on their castle because the man who owned it in the big manor house has died, and so they're basically living for free, and they living off their garden and just like the things that the local vicar gives them. They're extremely poor. And this novel is from the point of view of the 17-year-old girl, Cassandra, who's the youngest girl in the family. She has an older sister who is seen as being really beautiful. And so she is the one with all the prospects to marry someone and so forth. And so we follow them. This is all from her journal, Cassandra's journal. Follow their story, her and her sister Rose, as the people who inherit the manor, the young men, come to town and they're introduced to them. So these men are at the age where Rose could marry one of them. And, it's obviously a beneficial match since they're such a poor family. So it's very exciting that these men have come in town to give her some prospects. And it's all about the girls in this family meeting the men in that family and kind of just the romances that come up. There's also, more about her family, the interaction with the father. She has a younger brother as well. The stepmother, she's amazing. I really loved her interaction with the family. And this book, I felt like could, even though it was written like in the 40s, could compete with a current YA romance. Like there was just so much like romantic tension and drama and just a lot of the stuff you would see in a current YA romance, but just in like the kind of like simple countryside, English countryside kind of book. And I thought it was totally charming. I loved it. And like I said, it's a 4.5. Only didn't reach that because there were some times when I was like, oh, these characters are making such like, kind of like, just being ridiculous in the way they are. And that's part of the drama. And it just happens to be that some of that angst isn't my thing, but I just adored Cassandra. I really loved the ending. I know a lot of people sometimes don't like the ending from what I've seen online, but I predicted the ending and am so glad I was right, because there's a lot of ways it could end, and we don't know who Cassandra falls in love with for a lot of this book. And it kept me guessing. I didn't know who she was going to end up with. I made a guess, and I turned out to be right. And I'm glad everything turned out the way it did. I just thought it was excellent. I would totally read another book that Dodie Smith wrote. She's past tense, she wrote books. And I would highly recommend this if it's on your TBR or something. If you like YA romance and want to do a classic, this is a great one to do. And so that's all I have to say. I know I'm babbling a lot. Sorry about that. And that's the end of my wrap up. I hope you're having a great summer. Goodbye.